Welcome to the Fitness Beginner Podcast, where we help you take the first steps on your fitness journey. Whether you're new to working out or you're looking to get back into it, we've got you covered with tips, tricks, and inspiration to help you reach your goals. So grab your workout gear and let's get started. All right, and we are live. Welcome back with Murphy Mack to another episode of the Fitness Beginner Podcast. Today we got a controversial topic for y'all that it's a pretty good one. It's a pretty interesting one because not a lot of people kind of know whether they should or shouldn't do it. So, and that topic is training until failure. Like, should you train to failure? Should you not train to failure? When should you train to failure? When should you not train to failure? So, we're just gonna talk about all things training to failure. So maybe I can enlighten y'all a little bit about, kind of educate y'all a little bit more about training to failure. And I'm just gonna go ahead and be honest with y'all. I'm not dead set on one or the other. So from the get go, I do a little bit of both. I train to failure sometimes, and I don't train to failure. It all depends on your situation, your goals, and that's what we're gonna go over today in the podcast. But first, before we do that, we're gonna do the quick tip of the episode today. And today's quick tip, it's a pretty simple one, and it don't even have anything to do with the gym, but it has to do with preparation for the gym. So something that I've always done for basically ever since I started working out in the morning time, or pretty much ever since I started working out. You want to pack your gym bag the night before you go to the gym, or your work bag, whatever. So if you work out in the morning, you're going to be packing your work clothes. But if you work out in the afternoon, you're going to be packing your gym clothes. So go ahead and pack this the night before. And this is like the ultimate hack to make you actually stick to going to the gym. Because like if you don't have it packed, you're gonna make up some excuse the next morning and you're not gonna go, or something's gonna happen throughout the day and you can't go. But if you go ahead and pack your bag and you get ready for it, it's gonna make you that more like motivated and dedicated to go because you already packed it, you already got it ready. So you can't make up no excuse now. You can't just not go because you already got it. It's already ready. So I work out in the morning. This helps me out because I actually save time in the morning. I don't have to pack a bag in the morning, but I don't have no excuse not to go because my gym stuff's already ready. It's waiting on me. All I gotta do is grab the bag and head out the door. That's my quick tip. Go ahead and prepare all your things the night before. And this goes with like your lunch and stuff too. So if you're meal prepping your lunches, which you should be, go ahead and pack your lunch box the night before. Just toss your whole lunch box in the fridge. That way you ain't even gotta make it in the morning. You can just grab it and go on your way out the door. This is what I do. And it literally probably saves me packing my gym bag and packing my lunch the night before. And I've even started making my pre-workout the night before. It probably saves me 10 to maybe 15 minutes every morning. So that's one of my good hacks that I like to use to make me not make up some excuse of why I can't go to the gym in the morning because I already got it ready. We're going to hop up. I would update y'all by myself, but it's not really anything new to update. So we're just going to keep going. We're going to go into the meat and potatoes of the podcast. And today, what we're going to do is talk about when you should and when you should not train to failure when it comes to lifting weights in the gym. So this is a great debate. Some people are either for training to failure or some people are against training to failure. And then some people are kind of in the middle. And I'm the person in the middle. I believe in both, honestly. And there's kind of a fine line of when you should and shouldn't do it. So that's what we're going to get into. But before we get into it, we want to go over and like clarify what is training to failure, what that means. So training to failure refers to performing an exercise or a set of exercises until you physically cannot complete any more repetitions with the proper form. And that's key, with the proper form. You may be doing a lift and yeah, you may be able to get one more rep, but that one more rep is not going to be done correctly because you're using all your other muscles to lift the weight. Training to failure is doing the lift correctly till you cannot do it no more. Some argue that training to failure is necessary if you want to build if you want to maximize your muscle growth and your strength gains, while some others will advocate for a more conservative approach to weight training. So when should you train to failure? When should you not? That's what we're going to find out. First, we're going to talk about when to train to failure. So there's three instances when you should push your limits and you should train to failure. And this is when, number one, when you're doing a hypertrophy focused workout or training session, your primary goal is muscle hypertrophy. You're training to failure. It can be an advantage. It's going to push your muscles to that point of fatigue. It's going to stimulate more muscle fibers, and it's going to promote that greater muscle growth over time. So it's kind of hypertrophy focus. And this is going to be more for your advanced lifters. Number two, when you're trying to break a plateau, if you've been doing a certain lift for a while now and you can't do any more weight by yourself, it's kind of, you can go to failure to help kind of push the envelope a little bit. So when you're stuck in this you're stuck in this plateau and your progress kind of seems to be stagnant, you can kind of train a failure and this will help you a little bit. So push beyond your previous limits, shock your muscles, and this will force them to adapt and force them to grow. I actually like to, when this happens, I like to even train past failure. And so what do I mean by training past failure? This means training with a spotter. So you'll go into a complete failure by yourself and then get your spotter to help you get in a few extra reps. Don't let them do too much, but let them help you a little bit so you can knock out a few extra reps at the end, and they'll just help you a little bit. So that even kind of push you past failure a little bit. Number three, mental resilience. Training to failure occasionally can help build that mental toughness, can help build that discipline. It teaches you to embrace discomfort, push through the challenges. So this can have positive effects on not only in the gym, but in various areas of your life. It's going to teach you to keep going when things get hard. When an obstacle is thrown at you, you're going to know how to battle back. You're going to know how to respond. So sometimes it's good. It'll kind of build that mental resilience when you train to failure. All right, now we're going to hop into when to avoid training to failure. Training to failure can yield benefits. It's not always the best approach. So we're going to explore 3 situations of why avoiding training to failure may be appropriate for you. When should you avoid training to failure? Number one, if you're a beginner, I do not advise beginners to train to failure at all. One, because you don't need it. You simply don't need to train to failure when you're first starting out. In probably your first even 2 years of lifting, you really don't need to train to failure. Maybe after a year you probably could, but you're still getting those newbie gains. You're still getting stronger just from lifting weights because you're still so new and fresh. You don't really need to push that envelope to get stronger, to see results. When you're first starting out, it's crucial to prioritize your form, your technique, and you want to prevent injuries when you're first starting out because you're still learning. You're still getting used to it. Your body's still adapting. Your body's still growing. Your muscles are growing, things like that. So you're making changes. You don't want to train to failure with terrible technique because you're going to hurt yourself. So you want to focus on perfecting your movements and gradually increasing the intensity. That's more important at this stage, at the beginner stage, than to push yourself over that limit, training to failure. So you don't need it. You simply don't need it. If you're a beginner, you'll still see results training just short of failure. Leave 2 reps left in the tank and you'll be good. You don't need it as a beginner. And then number 2, if overtraining is at risk. Training to failure frequently, it increases the risk of overtraining, especially if combined with inadequate rest and recovery. So if you're training out 6-7 days a week, this can lead to overtraining really quick if you don't do it correctly. Am I saying to not train 6-7 days a week? No, I'm not. You can if you want to, but you need to do it correctly. You need to prioritize rest and recovery as well as your actual training routine. And overtraining will actually lead to diminished performance. It'll hurt your results if you overtrain because your muscles can never recover. They can't build. They can't grow back once you've kind of broken them down. So overtraining is going to increase your injury risk. It's going to make a decline in just your overall well-being. Sometimes you'll even notice that if you're overtraining, you'll get sick. Your body will literally get sick from you overtraining because you're pushing it beyond its limits. So it's crucial to find a balance between pushing yourself and allowing sufficient recovery. Number 3, specific performance goals. So not all training goals require pushing to failure. For example, athletes that are focusing on powerlifting or Olympic weightlifting, they're probably going to benefit from stopping short of failure. This is going to help them maintain technique and prevent injury because when it comes to Olympic lifting or powerlifting, technique is critical because you're lifting a lot of if you're powerlifting, you're lifting a lot of weights, which can lead to injury. And then if you're doing Olympic lifting, These can also lead to injury very easily because Olympic lifts are very technical. It's very critical to do the proper technique when you're doing Olympic lifts. You're very accident prone doing these kind of training. So you don't necessarily need to train to failure. Also, individuals training for like endurance sports, running, things like that, you may prioritize doing steady state training rather than training to failure. So they're more like endurance based. So they don't necessarily want to go to failure. They want to go the distance. So those are kind of three areas when you may want to avoid training to failure. But the key one on that one is the beginner stage. You don't need to do it if you're a beginner because it's just not necessary. I know a lot of people when they first start out, they want to go in the gym and go as hard as possible. And honestly, that was me. I'm guilty. I went as hard as I could. I even worked out twice a day for years when I was in high school. It wasn't necessary. It actually probably hurt me more than it helped me. Like I probably left a lot of gains on the table because I was overdoing it. But I was young. I was dumb. I was addicted to it. So it's whatever. So the last segment I want to go to before we end the podcast is finding that middle ground. So this is where I'm at. You need to find that middle ground. You got to find a good balance between both training to failure and not training to failure. So we've kind of discussed both sides of the coin. It's essential to emphasize the importance of individuality and balance in your training approach. The optimal strategy lies somewhere in the middle of failure and not failure. So number one, you want to think about progressive overload. Regardless of whether you train to failure or not, prioritizing progressive overload is the key. That's what you want to do. Progressive overload. This is how you're going to get stronger. This is how you're going to improve. It's how you get bigger. Gradually increasing the intensity, the volume, the difficulty of your workouts over time. This will ensure that you're getting continued progress. And then you can use that training to failure kind of as a tool to kind of help that. A supplementation to help that. You don't want to rely on it because it's not going to, you can't do it. You can't just train to failure every single day. Eventually, you're going to get diminished returns from it. Number two, variation and periodization. So incorporate different training techniques, periodize your workout to prevent plateaus and stimulate muscle growth. This can include alternating between training to failure and submaximal training or incorporating deload weeks to allow for recovery. So deload weeks are great too because we find ourselves in this constant habit of doing the same thing each and every week that we forget that the amount of stress that we're putting on our body. So sometimes it's good to have a deload week. You'll actually be surprised that you'll actually probably come back stronger if you did a deload week than if you was just to keep training. So a lot of people will find this. They'll take a week off or take a few days off and they'll come back and they're stronger. And they're like, well, why is this the case? That's because your body actually had a chance to recover. Your body had a chance to repair itself. So it grew and it got stronger. So I think deload weeks are great to implement into your training. I mean, you don't want to do a lot of them. You don't want to do one every month probably, but they're good to incorporate in there. So you just got to change it up. You got to periodize your training, do different training phases, and this will help make sure your muscles never get stagnant and you're always kind of changing it up so that they never stop growing. And then last but not least, just listen to your body. Your body will tell you if you're overtraining or if you're pushing too hard or not. Your body knows best. So pay attention to the signs like fatigue, pain, burnout, things like that. Your body's going to tell you if you're pushing the envelope. And if you're not feeling any of these symptoms, maybe you should push a little bit harder. Maybe you should go the extra set, go the extra rep, add the extra 5 pounds. So yeah, that's my spiel on training to failure or not training to failure. Like I said, I'm kind of in the middle. I'm in the middle. I will train to failure, but then I don't always train to failure. So it just depends on what workout I'm doing, what training phase I'm in. So obviously, if I'm trying to get stronger, yeah, I may emphasize training to failure more often. Or if I'm working out with a partner, days like these are the days that I'll train to failure more because I actually have somebody that can pick the weight up in case I drop it. I work out by myself a lot. It's not smart for me to put a lot of weight on the bar and fail because then I could get stuck under the bar, especially like the bench press or something. I don't want to be that guy that gets stuck up under there and they have to call somebody at the gym to come get me. It just depends on what you're doing in your training phase and depends on what your goals are at that time. So you kind of use these to your advantage and roll with it. That's it. Now we're going to move on to the motivational quote of the podcast. I know this podcast is kind of short, but still going to drop some value for y'all because I think this is an important topic to talk about because I think a lot of people are confused on the whole training to failure or not kind of thing. But yeah, the motivational quote for this week is, in the midst of every crisis lies great opportunity. I'll say it again. In the midst of every crisis lies great opportunity. So I think this is a great quote right now in today's day and age because it reminds us that even in the face of adversity and difficult times, there's a potential for growth, transformation, and new opportunities. So as you saw, for example, we just had COVID happen, and COVID literally changed how we do not everything, but a lot of things. Everything was already kind of transitioning into online or transitioned into the internet. But when COVID hit, that like transitioned everything. Like a lot of things went to online and some things never went back. Like some things went back to normal, but a lot of things they didn't have a choice but to do it online. And now that they do it online, they realize that it's more beneficial or it's easier or it's better. So a lot of things stayed online. This is like a crisis, but people saw a great opportunity, so they took it and it worked out better for them, or it was cheaper for them to produce, or it's more beneficial for them because they can impact more people over the internet. So an example of this is personal training. Personal training is moving to online, 100%. Yeah, there's a lot of personal trainers that train in person still because some people just like that personal connection where they can see you face to face. But most personal trainers, all the successful personal trainers nowadays, are all training online. That's just how it is. That's the way that the fitness industry is going, and I don't see it changing anytime soon because fitness trainers online can impact so many more people. They can have so many more clients because they're giving you programs online and they're not stuck to a gym for 8 hours a day. When you're training in the gym, you can only train one person at a time. So if you work 8 hours a day, you can only train 8 clients a day. If you're online, you can have 50 plus clients a day and train them all and impact 50 people's lives in one day. So that's just the way that the fitness industry has kind of adapted throughout that crisis. So yeah, that's kind of what I think of this quote, how I understand it. Just because something bad's happening don't necessarily mean you can't make something out of it and grow from it, learn from it, and kind of take the opportunity to keep pushing and getting better. So yeah, that's all I got for y'all. Thanks for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. Yeah, if you have any topics for the podcast and you want me to go over, please hit me up. Let me know. Follow me on all my socials, Murphy Mac Fit. That's MurphyMcFit. It's pretty much all on YouTube, Murphy McCammon, or the Fitness Beginner Podcast. Y'all check me out. Give me a follow. Message me if you got any questions. I'd love to help you out. Give me a podcast topic. Maybe we'll do a whole podcast on it. I appreciate it. Y'all have a great rest of y'all's week. I hope y'all learned something from the podcast today. Apply it into your next training session. Until then, catch y'all next time. Peace, love, protein. We out. Thanks for tuning in to the Fitness Beginner Podcast. We hope you found today's episode helpful and inspiring. Remember to always start small, set realistic goals, and most importantly, have fun. Don't forget to tune in next week for more tips and advice on how to kickstart your fitness journey. Until then, stay active and stay healthy.